The second section of the FATF's finalized crypto recommendations relates to how governments should approach regulating cryptocurrencies and crypto companies. These are basically the FATF's actual recommendations, and I've changed their numbering and trimmed the fat to make them easier to understand. So, first, governments need to assess the risks associated with the cryptocurrencies and crypto companies operating in their countries. Second, governments need to make sure that regulations they implement account for the rapid evolution of cryptocurrency. Third, governments need to pay very close attention to the adoption of stablecoins, especially before they launch. I think I just heard the sound of a stable door closing there, no pun intended. Anyways, the fourth step governments need to take is to do an in-depth analysis on peer-to-peer cryptocurrency transactions happening in their jurisdiction. If these peer-to-peer transactions fail to meet the FATF standards, governments should consider engaging in a series of sanctions, including preventing cryptocurrency exchanges from accepting cryptocurrencies from certain wallets. Fifth, governments need to closely monitor how well FATF standards are being applied by VOSPs located in other countries and sanction them if they haven't fallen in line with the FATF's recommendations. I reckon this is what happened to Binance earlier this year and why it subsequently applied KYC. Sixth, governments need to work closely with other governments to make sure cryptocurrencies and crypto companies are being regulated in accordance with these recommendations. Seventh, governments need to make sure they classify cryptocurrencies appropriately. And speaking of which, you can learn about the different types of crypto categories by watching my video about that, and it's up in the top right. Anyhow, I digress. The eighth thing the FATF says governments should do is track cryptocurrency transactions for illegal activity and confiscate them wherever possible. The individuals or institutions engaging in this illicit activity should obviously be met with sanctions as well. Ninth, governments should look to freeze the assets of any criminals whenever they can, something which has been done many times with the help of decentralized stablecoin issuers, by the way. The 10th suggestion is surprising, and that's that governments should take care to protect non-profit organizations from financial crimes involving cryptocurrency. 11th, governments should keep detailed records of all their crypto tracking activities. 12th, governments should, quote, designate one or more authorities that have responsibility for licensing and/or registering VOSPs. 13th, governments need to pay attention to where VOSPs are registered, noting that most VOSPs should be registered in the countries they originated from. Now, this begs the question of how long crypto companies will be able to continue operating out of tax havens. I will point out that most crypto projects start out in tax havens and work their way into more regulated jurisdictions once they've grown large enough. Mandating VOSPs to register in their country of origin could make it harder for new crypto projects to emerge from certain countries and territories. Anyways, the FATF's 14th recommendation flows from the 13th, and that's that governments should also create an authority whose job is to make sure VOSPs are registered in this manner. 15th, governments should make sure that all VOSPs are collecting KYC from the moment they begin operating. 16th, governments should be extra strict with any VOSPs that support stablecoins, in case that wasn't already clear enough. 17th, governments should work closely with other governments to make sure everyone is abiding by all this FATF stuff. 18th, governments should, quote, ensure that financial institution secrecy laws do not inhibit the implementation of the FATF recommendations. In short, no financial privacy allowed if the FATF is around. 19th, governments should make sure that every cryptocurrency transaction above $1,000 is reported to the relevant authorities. 20th, governments should consider tracking so-called occasional transactions too, and these are any cryptocurrency transactions worth less than $1,000. 21st, governments should consider any cryptocurrency or crypto company as being high risk if it offers any kind of privacy. 22nd, governments should collect detailed information on any individual or institution considered to be engaging in high-risk activities. 23rd, governments should ensure that all relevant information about keeping in line with the FATF's recommendations is up to date. 23rd, governments should keep these records for at least 5 years, quote, in such a way that individual transactions can be reconstructed and the relevant elements provided swiftly to competent authorities. 24th, governments should be mindful of any politically exposed persons or PPEs involved in cryptocurrency. 25th, governments should assess the risks associated with any new crypto technologies that emerge and address them appropriately. 26th, governments should pay close attention to any bank or wire transfers associated with VOSPs. 27th, governments should make sure that VOSPs are reporting this along with any other crypto-related information, quote, immediately and securely to the relevant regulators. 28th, governments should consider requiring both individuals and institutions to include memos in cryptocurrency transactions containing identifying information, which is pretty crazy. 29th, governments should make a list of all VOSPs in all jurisdictions to simplify compliance with the FATF's recommendations. 30th, governments should enforce the travel rule requirement as soon as possible. If you're wondering how soon, Nota Bene, a FATF compliance company that recently partnered with Tether, notes on its website that this will happen no later than June 2022. On that note, I do recommend checking out Nota Bene's website if you want to see the status of the FATF's travel rule implementation in your country, and I'll leave a link to it in the description. Spoiler, some countries are already on board. Anyways, the FATF's 31st suggestion to governments is that they should give legal immunity to VOSPs who break any client confidentiality laws, so long as they're doing so in the name of the FATF. 32nd, governments should work together so that there is no country with more relaxed crypto regulations than others, an international standard, if you will. 33rd, governments should ensure that any crypto projects related to gaming or gambling be held to the same standard as VOSPs. This could have some serious consequences for the likes of Axie Infinity and Decentraland, both of whom have the kind of in-game activities that the FATF doesn't like. 34th, governments should actively supervise VOSP operations. 35th, governments should use blockchain tracking firms such as Chainalysis as part of this supervision. These firms can then designate individuals and institutions as high risk according to the FATF. This is something that Nota Bene does, and one of my assistant detectives here at the Coin Bureau reached out to them to ask what criteria they use to determine a crypto transaction as being high risk. Unfortunately, we've yet to receive a response, but the FATF notes one of these factors as being, quote, cryptocurrency transfers that have passed through mixers or come from privacy wallets. This probably also applies to certain decentralized applications such as Tornado Cash, which I've also done a video on, and that, of course, is in the top right. 36th, gosh, they've got a lot of recommendations, haven't they? 36th, governments should constantly change the way they supervise VOSPs to make sure they're always complying with the FATF's recommendations. And yeah, that's about it for the FATF's recommendations for governments, that is.